what is the place of thought and what is the place of action. There is always this tension between action and stillness. Normally, we tend to think that we are still when we are not doing anything, not thinking anything, and we are caught in movement when we are doing or thinking. And thinking, by the way, is doing, right? Thinking, speaking, doing are all actions. That's why these activities are called as karmendriyas in Sanskrit too, right? They are organs of action, speech, thought, speech, physical action of all kinds are all related. So many times because of this tension, we think that stillness is to be found through shutting thought, which is to shut action completely. And that is definitely one way to be still. And we clearly see that kind of stillness in deep sleep, for example, where there is no activity of any kind, there is no thinking, there is no speaking, no doing, no perceiving either. Because the other important thing to recognize is perception is also actually action. All perceptions require the mind to activate and recognize what is being perceived. One of the things we sometimes ignore is that the very act of perception is actually tremendous action. And this is, in fact, now very easily or very clearly demonstrated by the rise of AI and robotics and so on, because getting the robotic vision is a very hard problem. Our eyes are able to conceive, perceive things and recognize them, do pattern matching. We may seem like we are not doing any action, but we are actually engaging in a lot of action when we are simply seeing something. So perception is also another form of action. So there is perception, there is thought, there is actual physical action. All of this is there. And all of this is shut off in deep sleep. So when we are in deep sleep, we are not only not thinking or acting, we are also not perceiving anything. The senses are shut, everything is shut, and there is complete quietness, which is stillness. And the same kind of stillness can be accomplished in meditation when all the senses are pulled inward and there is no movement of perception of any kind, there is no thought, there is no speaking, there is no action. And this is normally called as samadhi. Some kind of samadhi is mentioned in this, especially in yogic terms, it's mentioned as samadhi. So this kind of samadhi, where there is no movement at all, is also a state of being awake without having any action, and there is stillness there, right? But then there is the movement that comes after that, which is inevitable, because we cannot be in that state forever, right? Neither can we be in deep sleep forever. However peaceful it is, however beautiful it is, the body will wake up, right? We cannot be in deep sleep. Otherwise, if deep sleep is so blissful, we would be there forever. But the very energy comes forth out of it in the morning. Same with any kind of samadhi. Even if we enter samadhi, as many have testified to as well, however long and blissful it is, it comes and it goes. It's of the state, it's of the nature of coming and going. So that kind of stillness is clearly, therefore, dependent on external situation, external circumstances, and It's not something that sustains itself. Whereas there is a completely different kind of stillness, which is what is the real meaning of stillness that we can explore, which is not by shutting off action, but by finding stillness in action. It is what is called as inaction in action. So in Gita, Krishna uses this term, inaction in action. So being active while being still. And this way is the way of being free while engaged in action. And to come upon that removes the tension between activity and stillness. Otherwise, what happens is we may fragment our lives, right? We may say that during meditation, I'm still, I'm peaceful. And then when I'm dealing with the responsibilities of life and I'm working, when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, I'm just looking that as a some kind of a tax to pay for living itself, and then I'm just waiting for meditation when I can remain in peace, right? So our life gets divided into meditation and non-meditation. That's not what is pointed to as the natural state of stillness, which is also called in Sanskrit as sahaja sthiti. Right? Sahaja means natural. So what is natural is action, because action is the very energy of life itself. The movement of energy is what creates everything. And creation has only as its purpose expression of the energy itself. See, many times people have this question, why is there creation? What is the purpose of creation? And implicitly, when we try to shut out all activity, shut out all thinking, and want to only go to stillness, which is complete absence of all activity, we are essentially wanting to escape the energy of life itself, right? We are wanting to go to the state of deep sleep, which is the state of inaction, which is the state where life is in dormancy. But creation of any kind has its own energy, which is to be celebrated. And when we have this kind of adversarial relationship with activity, when we think that all action is causing disturbance and removing the peace, then we are in effect wanting to deny life and want to escape into inaction. And this, taken to its extreme, is what sometimes makes many to want to just literally leave and go to a forest or go to Himalayas or go to wherever one can escape to, and all the things one does, thinking that that would remove all the impediments that are there for peace. But the reality is, wherever we go, we will find that action will be inevitable. So even if we go to the Himalayas, we still have to feed the body. The body is not going to stop being hungry. And hunger means food, food means action. So action is the very essence of life itself. And the impulse for action comes on its own. We don't have to do anything in order for action to happen. Action happens on its own because that's the very expression of life. So the real problem, therefore, is not action, but it's the idea that I am doing the action. right? Because we have this identification that I am doing the action, it creates all kinds of conflict, right? When we are sitting and see, when we are looking for any activity to happen, we seem to think that there is some fixed self or ego or whatever we call it within us, that is the author of all the actions, that is the experiencer of all the results of the actions. And this ego myth that we have is what is causing us to feel disturbance with action, because every time we do an action, we inherently own it, right? We think I have done the action. And so the moment I feel I have done the action, I feel that either I have to get credit for it, or I fear blame for it. I want to get acknowledged for it. I regret if I did it correctly. I am proud if I did it well. All these movements come, and then in the same way, I project a doer within others, and then I compare whether they have done it better than me, and then there is envy, there is superiority, there is inferiority, all the other things that come. So there is a whole sequence of movement of thought, movement of um, psychological energy that is being wasted because of this ownership of me as the doer. So the real pointer of inaction in action or stillness in action is simply a recognition that actions happen on their own through the natural energy that is there. And that natural energy that acts has its own intelligence with which it's acting. And I am not the doer because there is no I doing these actions. And this has great implications, because what happens is when we are caught in this idea that I have to escape action to realize stillness, there are two things we do. One is that we are denying life itself. We are somehow wanting to escape from life. We are looking at life as a chore. We are looking at problems without the strength to face them. Right? We feel that we have this attitude of not having the strength and the wherewithal to face the problems of life because we shirk from them. We want to just escape from them. So there is a life denying aspect to it. And the second problem with it is that it's also, in the same vein, solidifying the me, because the one who wants to deny life and escape from it is the same false self. So the same false self which is active in, let's say, a worldly person who wants to engage in action, but for the sake of getting credit, for the sake of getting wealth, power, whatever it is the same self, but it's operating in a negative way. It says, now I want to, this is all Maya, so I have to just realize the truth. So, but this whole idea is a false understanding of the word Maya itself. And therefore, it is only sustaining the Maya of the false self, because I am thinking that I am this false self and I am somehow reifying it, fortifying it by this idea. So both of these are there. One, I don't face the challenges of life with my shoulders open, as it were, with strength. And second, also in this way, I strengthen this false idea of a separate self. Whereas if we recognize that there is only the ground of being which is coming forth as the energy of action, right? So then action is the natural expression of this energy, of this ground of being itself. Action is that which happens all around us, all the time, within the body, outside the body, everywhere. So the impulse for us to even survive, to get hungry and to eat, the impulse to take care of the physical body even in any way, is all coming forth on its own because nature wants to preserve itself. That's part of nature. There is an instinctive part of nature to preserve, to survive, and to expand. So when we deny this expansion of nature, then we are actually at odds with nature itself. I remember, so Vivekananda put it very nicely. He said, expansion is life, contraction is death. It's a very beautiful, simple expression of the truth of life itself. He also said, strength is life, weakness is death. So if we look at this carefully, then we will see how contraction always denies life, right? Because expansion is the nature of life, nature of Shakti. The energy that is prevalent around this universe always wants to expand. In fact, literally the universe is expanding. According to physics, the universe is expanding faster than the speed of light. The whole universe is expanding. We are expanding. See, that's why we celebrate when we have children or grandchildren, right? We never, the natural instinct for us is to celebrate birth because birth is expansion, right? If we take a logical conclusion that life is suffering, then we would not celebrate birth, right? Why do we celebrate birth and why do we think it's a very auspicious thing? Because expansion is life. But at the same time, we function in odds with it when we think we have to deny life, deny thought, deny action, and just go into a sleep-like state, right? So that denial of life, denial of the natural expansion of the life energy itself is what causes weakness also. Because strength comes when we embrace this expansion. Right? When we embrace this expansion, then we recognize that every challenge that comes is an opportunity to expand. When we face a challenge, the challenge gives us an opportunity to expand ourselves, to go into our own inner nature and bring out what is necessary to meet the challenge. But if we shirk from the challenge, then we deny life and we become weak. And this weakness can be at the individual level, it can become at the societal level, it can also become at the civilizational level. And it's been seen. So when this kind of philosophy becomes very prevalent, then such a civilization becomes enslaved also. And easily, because there is no resistance, there is no interest in fighting, there is no interest in developing strength at any level, then such a civilization becomes weak, such a society becomes weak, such a person becomes weak. So that's why Krishna says in the Gita, never to stop action. Right? He says you have to act with the wisdom that you are not the doer. And not only that, we have to act in tune with our swabhava. So this is another important pointer given in the Gita too. And it's very natural to life itself. See, every one of us inherently have what is called as our inherent nature, right, which is called the swabhava. So swabhava means that which is natural to us. And everyone has a swabhava, right? The swabhava is, of course, dictated by many factors. There is the swabhava that is dictated by gender, by stage of life, by proclivity, and so on. But predominantly speaking, everyone has a swabhava, and something in our swabhava always wants to express itself. So The true purpose of life, if we can put it that way, is to let the Swabhava express itself to its fullest potential without any false sense of ownership of it. So there is no sense of doership, there is no me, and there is a total expression of the Swabhava. Right? So this way of living is what is given in the Gita too, and it's pointed to by all the great sages, that one can continue with action. In fact, action goes on perfectly when the Swabhava expresses itself fully, and there is no psychological thinking around the sense of doership and the associated commentary or the narrative, which we already said drains the energy, right? See, when we are engaging in action, the reason so many people who are engaged in action in the world, they face a lot of problems is because of all the energy that gets drained, right? So we are comparing, we are always worried about what others are thinking, we are feeling superior, we are depressed, we want to achieve something, and then when we don't achieve it, we feel disappointment, we are goal oriented. All of this comes forth in the world of action. So we see there is a lot of suffering that comes in that way of acting. So the unfortunate thing that happens is that, okay, we think this is all suffering, therefore I have to completely avoid all action, right? That's the opposite extreme we take, which, as we pointed out already, leads to escapism, contraction, weakness. So the way which is neither this nor that, which is the, again, that's why the kind of metaphor of razor's edge is very beautiful in all these things. Because if we fall on this side or that side of the razor, then we are caught in one or the other. But if you walk on the edge is that we engage in action all the time, expressing the swabhava that is there, while not having any sense of ownership. Now, when we say, some people may say that I have no responsibilities in life because I'm old enough and I'm done with everything. Therefore, what's wrong in escaping from life? But the moment we do that, we actually see that the energy of life itself is ebbing away, right? Because the energy of life wants to expand. That is the nature, that's the law of nature. And it wants to expand itself and it wants to express itself fully and completely at any given moment and face the challenges we have and overcome it till the last moment. That's the law of nature if we see in every aspect. If we see any animal, if we see any bird, if we see the plants, the trees, everything is going through the same cycle. They are always expanding in some form or the other. But humans, because of thinking, we sometimes get into this kind of what's called as a nihilistic philosophy. This nihilism is denying life itself. And many philosophies, in the name of voidness or so on, bring forth this nihilism in life, where we think life is meaningless, life is purposeless. I should just, it's basically embracing death. And that's what happens that's what is meant by contraction is death. So, neither to be aggressive in action, but nor to shirk action because I find it to be too cumbersome, but to engage in action without a sense of doership. This is the way. And this is the way at any point, because at any given point, see, the important thing to ask ourselves is, what can I offer now based on my swabhava that can be of help to the common humanity at large, to anyone at large? So another way to put it is, what is the greatest good I can conceive of that I can do right now? If we orient ourselves in that way, then we'll always find something to do. Right? So we are all, everyone is blessed with various skills, various abilities, whether it's some may be singing, some may be able to write, some may be able to cook well, some may be able to do many things. And all of these skills are all expansion itself. So it's energy that brings forth. So if we recognize that whatever skill is there as my swabhava, that is the nature that is wanting to express itself. Again, words are always limited because it's not even right to say my swabhava, it's swabhava, that's all. There is the nature that is here. See, for some person, math may come very easily. See, if we take, we had this nice example the other day of Srinivasa Ramanujan. He's a great mathematician. His nature was just looking at equations, right? And he was doing that till the last moment. Even in his deathbed, he was looking at equations. And the equations, in fact, he came upon his deathbed as it took 60 years for people to prove that. That's how powerful because he was giving full expression to his potential. And it's unfortunate that he died so young because of health reasons. So in a similar way, there are many who, on the flip side, who are even 90 years old and who are very active, right? Because they are expressing their potential to the fullest in whatever realm of life that they have chosen. See, for instance, if I have worked in a particular field and I am, let's say, 70 years old or 80 years old, there is a wealth of experience that one has, and there are so many people who will benefit from it, right? So one can mentor people, one can in any profession. So there is always things we can come up with which are inherent to our swabhava, which helps people around, right? Of course, the greatest help we can offer is the wisdom of this recognition itself, that there is only the non-dual expansion of energy coming forth from the ground of being. To be grounded in this wisdom is the greatest service we can offer, and to share it with others as well. But beyond that also, if there is any particular skill that naturally comes to us, we can always express it. We must always express it. There is no reason to shirk from it. And at any stage of life, if we are looking at ourselves and if we see that this is the set of talents that is there and this is the way it can be put to service to society, in whatever way we conceive it of. So even if let's say we can teach 10 kids something, that's a great thing to do with one's time. Or whatever it is that one can offer as service, all of this can be done as an expression of one's swabhava. And if we inculcate this attitude of expansion of life itself at all times, right? Strength, which is expansion, which is full expression of one's potential, without a sense of doership, a sense of ownership. That is the way to live, where there is no ego, there is no suffering, and there is stillness within because of the absence of the ego, but there is tremendous action happening outwardly. And as I think we a couple of times mentioned, this is not very mystical also. There are many times, for instance, sportsmen and others come up on the state where they are playing or acting and they are still inwardly. So there is that. But the most important thing is at all levels, if we have a philosophy that is life affirming, then that philosophy can be that is healthy for at all levels. It's healthy for the individual, healthy for society, healthy for a whole civilization and the whole species. If a philosophy is life denying, then it creates weakness at all levels. And we can see by the very nature of what philosophy we embrace, whether it's life affirming or life denying. So the life, if you look at the rishis of the Vedic times, for example, they were all, if you look at it commonly, they were all life affirming at all levels. First of all the rishis were married, they had children, they had many children, they worked on many different skills, they wrote treatises on various sciences of that time, and at the same time they were all rooted in this wisdom, right? So this is the Vedic tradition, that one can engage in action that benefits the whole world and be free inwardly at the same time. You don't have to deny life at any level. But later, some philosophies came which caused life denial, and those philosophies have had a lot of impact at all levels, individual up to civilizational. But the real awakening of strength, of awakening of fearlessness, awakening of freedom, is in recognizing the life affirming philosophy of living itself, which is to live without a sense of self as the ego and yet be engaged in action all the time. And when we engage in action all the time in this way, without a sense of ego or self, then that action is pure action because it's coming from the very source itself. It's not corrupted by the idea of a doer. And therefore, the action is pure. It is selfless, literally. That's what it's meant by selfless action. It's not a pretense. It's truly selfless because there is no doership there. There is just action without the doer. And such action brings forth auspiciousness all around. It brings forth creativity. It brings forth all sciences. That's how arts come. That's how technology comes. That's how science comes. All of this can come. So none of this need to be at odds with spiritual living. In fact, they are all part of spiritual living. In the ancient times, that's why it is said that all the 64 arts are part of the way of living in an enlightened way. And every art is an expression of beauty. So if we go back to the question of why is there even creation, creation is nothing but an expression of beauty itself. So it's the aesthetic value that makes life purposeful. That's why it's called as Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. Right? That's the nature of truth. Truth which is auspicious and which is aesthetic. So anything we do, if we look for a purpose in time, then we are caught in the ego. Right? If I say that I will do this and therefore I'll get credit tomorrow, or therefore I will get more power tomorrow, then we are caught in the sense of ego, which is causing the kind of suffering that action brings. But if we deny action, as we already said, we are against life itself. But if we embrace action for the purpose of action itself, without any other purpose, see, if we cook something, we are cooking for the joy of cooking itself. If we teach something, we do for the joy of teaching itself, right? Every activity we do, the beauty of the activity is the reward of the activity. There is no other reward that's needed, right? That is the essence of the word Sundaram. So what we have lost touch with, that's why as civilization also, especially in India, the civilization that produced the most beautiful temples and the most aesthetic arts, right now, there is no premium on beauty in the culture, right? That's why we see, because when life denying philosophy takes over, then beauty also takes a backseat, right? When there is life affirming philosophy, then beauty is central to it. Every temple, all the arts, all the beautiful expressions. Everything was so aesthetic, right? And that aesthetic value is the hallmark of a civilization itself. If we don't have beauty, then we are missing the most essential aspect of life, because it is sundaram, goodness, truth, and beauty always go together. So when we bring forth this holistic way of living, which is rooted in truth, that there is no doer here, but the energy alone is, which is expanding, and it is auspicious because the auspiciousness is coming forth through the action that is selfless, and that creates beauty, which is the only purpose of action itself. Then we are in sync with nature, because that is the purpose of the whole universe itself. The whole universe is rooted in truth, it is auspicious, and it is beautiful. If we look at the sun, the moon, the, the cycles of season, the flowers blooming, the bees, everything is beautiful. There is so much beauty in nature. Why is there so much beauty? Because that is the purpose of creation itself. Creation has no other purpose. If we can say what is the purpose of God, God's purpose is, in terms of creation, God's purpose of creation is just beauty, just bringing forth the joy of beauty itself. And we are in sync with God when we are engaging in the act of creation with this selfless, doerless movement that brings forth beauty in our own surroundings. And it can be at all levels. If we deny all of this and we think I'm done with life, or life is suffering, or life is a problem, and therefore I want to shirk from life, then it only invites weakness, contraction, and inner death. So if we recognize this, then it can bring forth a totally different way of living. We can live and see how we can be of service at any given moment by putting our natural swabhava to its fullest potential of expression, creating beauty around us, which is the very purpose of life itself, when it's done without a sense of doership, and therefore there is peace and stillness within. And that way of living also, see, when one is not expressing one's potential fully, subconsciously there is all kinds of regret that comes. We feel that because it's nature wants one to express fully. If we are not expressing ourselves, we feel guilty about it. Subconsciously there can be guilt, there can be a sense of self-judgment, and then we will justify it by saying, no, I am seeking God and therefore it's okay. All of this kind of narrative becomes unhealthy. But when we recognize that there is nothing to seek, but God is right here, right now, as the very expression of this very body, and it is the nature of God to expand and express fully. And so we just step out of the way as the false me that claims ownership and give full expression to the inherent nature that expresses itself. Then there is tremendous action that can come forth creatively without any suffering that comes due to this false idea of a separate self. So that is the essence of awakening to strength, awakening to fearlessness, awakening to clarity. And it's the most important thing we can do, because right now we are, of course, we are a global civilization, so to speak. And so whatever we do, it impacts the whole world. So we tend to ignore and think I'm in the small corner of the world, but it's not like that, because whatever we do, even if it touches a few people, it has its own impact and it spreads in its own way. See, for instance, I was We were talking of Bharatiya briefly. Bharatiya's funeral, only 9 people were there. That's how much he was valued in his lifetime. But now he is, and there are so many greats like that. So we don't know what our work does and what impact it can have at what time. So our job is to express our potential fully and not worry about the result or what impact it has or what the world is doing or any of that. But we have to do what we can do completely without any sense of expectation of any result or any credit, and at all levels. And there is no end to that, right? That's why it is said, never retire. We can retire from work, that's a different thing. Corporate life, one can retire when one is done, but not retire inwardly. There is always something to be done which can express our talents, our skills, our potential in the best possible way, by either by mentoring others, helping others, teaching others, whatever we can conceive of to bring forth the inherent potential to its maximum expression.
Okay.
See, when we say realizing moksha is our purpose, you said, right? Attaining moksha is our purpose. See, when we, again, it depends on the way we define it. See, moksha simply means freedom, right? So being free can be said to be the purpose, right? But then we have to define, what does it mean to be free? Is freedom a state that can be attained at some point in time? Or is freedom the very absence of the one who wants to be free?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I understand.
See, because as long as I think freedom is a state to be attained,
yes,
as you say, it is at odds with life itself, right? Because let's say I'm having some responsibility, but I'm telling myself that I have to attain moksha, and they are at odds with each other, right? And that's how it begins, because in the beginning, the natural, see, we all go through life and we face problems and all the rest, and then we feel a sense of bondage, right? There is a sense of bondage. So we yearn for freedom, we yearn for moksha, as you put it. But what happens at that point is we make this moksha into a goal to be attained, right? So we have diagnosed the problem correctly, that all these images I have and all the things that goes on is causing bondage, right? But then I'm immediately coming, and then I'm trying to either go to a religious kind of freedom where someone says, oh, you do this and that and one day you will reach heaven or this or that, or I can project a state and say, this state I have to attain and I have to work towards it. And so it's either in space or in time. So whichever way we do it, we are creating a division between life and freedom. So the pointer then is, having come to this, when you recognize that that very division is what is causing one to not realize the freedom now. See what I'm saying? So as long as I think I am bound and freedom is out there in some form, whether it's in space or in time, whatever it is, then this sense of being bound is the false self, right? And this false self will never be able to get that in time or in space. So that's why the question is always, who wants freedom? So if you say the question, who am I? It can be, it's the purpose of that question is to turn the attention to who is doing all this.
But that requires what, right? Because it's not the natural state for us, right, to turn to self, right? Because we have been conditioned in life to always
Right.
look outwards, and so we never turn to self.
Correct.
And so it requires, because it is something against our habit or
Right.
nature, whatever you call it, it takes an effort to go back. And I will go back to Bhagavan himself. A lot of things what he talks about is you have to constantly self, abide in self, and that's it. It's not like a process you just do once in a while. It's a continuous activity, right? That's it.
No, I
So then
right.
my question is,
Mm.
because like if for someone who is trying to do something worldly, or not worldly, I mean like something you are trying to help, swabhava, right? But then that has got its own chitta vrittis, and so you end up you know spending a
Right.
lot of time
Right.
doing all of that,
Yeah.
and
Good.
then you realize, oh, I forgot myself while I was doing that. And so that part,
Yes.
I know it probably comes at some point where you are able to retain that self and do the outside thing, but that doesn't happen on day one. It seems like it's not a easy endeavor to be able to do both together.
So yeah, it's a good thing to explore, right? So um, see, that's why wisdom or insight is very essential, right? So because as you say, if I'm engaged in my swabhava, the natural conditioning is to identify with it as a separate ego doing this. So I think I'm doing, if let's say I'm doing math very well, then I may think I'm such a great mathematician, and why am I not getting the recognition and this and that, Along with the actual math, there is all the vritti, all these vrittis that are coming in parallel. And that is causing us to move away from that space of stillness, right? That's very true. Absolutely, that is exactly the situation of normal conditioning, right? So that is why this inquiry is very important. No question about it, right? But what is the question is not whether inquiry is needed. Inquiry is, of course, essential because we don't otherwise turn within. We don't question who is doing this action. Am I the doer? And all this, inquiry is essential. But what is the goal of the inquiry is the only question. Inquiry is essential. But is the inquiry to deny life, which is to say, okay, action is difficult, and therefore I'm going to just abide in the self, whatever that, because when I say that, again, if you have to recognize that, see, words are always so. Ramana Maharshi may say abide in the self, but it's not, the word self there is used as synonymous with stillness itself, right? It is mauna, which is inner mauna, not even outer mauna. So he says in many places, stillness is tremendous action also, right? So, so when we say abide in the self, what do we mean by that? We have to, because if we think self is a construct of the mind, we may project that some idea of the self, all of that, then it becomes right. So it is to abide in stillness. Yes. So sometimes it's better to use the word stillness than just self, because then because we may reify that word into a concept. Yeah. It's just stillness. Stillness, right. Or silence. Yeah, inner silence. So to abide in silence requires this inquiry, exactly as you point out. So whenever the me rises, you have to ask who is rising here and turn it within to the stillness, right? Now, does that deny action? See, you've come upon
it
so
delays action.
Huh?
It delays action, because what happens is while you are engaging in something, this
Right.
could be while you're cooking or whatever, right?
Right.
You're doing that, and you want to be in inner silence while you're doing that, right? But that is still, on day one or maybe even day 100, that's still not natural. It's not it's not that sahaja. It doesn't happen automatically, right? So then you realize that when I am sitting with myself, not doing anything, I'm able to come back to myself more. I'm able to come back to abide on silence more frequently than when I'm engaged in something else, because then I'm caught up in whatever I'm doing, and so the time interval between, the times when I catch myself and go to myself is now much more distant.
Okay. No,
That part.
so it's certainly true that having some space to inquire and to gather together. See, for example, that's what we are doing now, right? We are gathering together to look at all of this and to sit in silence or to discuss. See, we are not doing any action outwardly right now. We are only inquiring, right? And inquiring, as first of all, we have to be very clear, is not just it's also through such discussion, right? Whether we talk, whether we read, whether we sit and meditate, if you are truly turned within, inquiry can happen in that, right? So that inquiry is essential, as you say. But this inquiry is meant to free us from this false idea so that we can actually give expression to the swabhava without this false sense of self. That is the purpose of this inquiry. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that inquiry is essential. Abiding in stillness is essential. And sometimes abiding in stillness is, as you say in the beginning, easier by disengaging from action for some time. So this is the way we have the idea of a retreat, right? So even in, so where does the word retreat come from? It comes from wars, right? Like in wars, they have a retreat, right? Why do we retreat? To gather your strength, to go back and fight. You cannot be permanently in retreat, right? The whole purpose of retreating is to go and fight the battle of life. Recharge. So we can always gather together like this, or we sit in the morning silently, or we read, which is all essential to deepen this realization, this recognition that there is no me here, there is stillness which is coming forth as energy, and that energy is expressing itself through this body, through the thoughts, through everything, right? Then that is meant to go and act, right? Otherwise, if I just say that I can be still only when I am sitting silently, the moment I am engaging in action, then I am I'm not in stillness.
Yes.
Then I have, in some sense, made the stillness dependent on external circumstances, right? And not only that, in the process, I am not giving expression to life as it wants to see. For so just a simple thing, you have to eat every day, 2 times or 3 times a day. That requires action, right? Now, if I am going to think of that action, cooking and eating and cleaning and all that is necessary, as some kind of a distraction, because it takes me away from stillness, then I'm always, the life is fragmented, right? There is moments of stillness and then there is this action. But the purpose of sahaja, as we said, the word is to have this in a natural way without fragmentation through the day. So we can always gather together like this, and it's great to gather together or sit silently in solitude, or all the things we do to deepen this recognition by recognizing the stillness. And but it also has to be complemented with the natural expression of action, right? Otherwise, we will only be in this when we are outwardly not acting. The moment we are acting, we are, so then what we do is we want to minimize the action outwardly, right? We want to minimize activities. Then we are at the limit. Well, the best way to minimize activity is to just, so we can, we will just flinch from life itself, right? So it's basically, if you look at it logically, it is life denying, right?
But
We are
there is-
not, see, we don't take, so what happens is we may not take care of our health properly, we may not take care of our situation properly, and then it results in deterioration, and then life will demand action. So if you don't take care of your health,
Yes, yes.
one day you will fall sick, and then life will demand action when you will not be able to be still at all, because your neglect of your action will make you act in a different way, right? So the point is that all of these go together: health and strength and expansion, all of these go together. Weakness, contraction, sickness all go together.
Yeah.
So, to live, what is the purpose of all of this? It's not to just see, this world is here as an expression of the divine, right? And there's an expression of the divine that is each one of us. And it has its own purpose, it has its own, and the purpose is not in time, but as we said, the purpose is to express itself right now in the most meaningful way, because this moment is all there is. And in this moment, whatever we do, if we do it with fullest attention, and it brings forth, therefore, naturally beauty and care and joy, that with the wisdom within, that I'm not the doer, that things are happening,
Yeah.
is the holistic expression of life, right? That's
Yeah. And so I think maybe this is maybe where I'm trying to get to. So I think what you're saying is you need both.
Yes.
You need both, and engaging in action is not going to slow you down in terms of, you may think that it is slowing you down in terms of realizing, the being liberated. That's as we define, right?
Sure.
That moksha, being
Freedom,
free,
yeah,
free,
yeah.
right? You don't have to do it 24/7. Relinquishing all actions and just being there, in a way that might even slow you down. And so, doing action, doing it the right way, the swadharma, it can actually
Yes.
also be beneficial in accelerating your
Exactly.
that.
Right, exactly. That's right. So Swadharma is connected to your Swabhava, right? So when we have our natural expression of our Swabhava, which is Swadharma, without the sense of doership as the mean, then it is the holistic expression of life with stillness within, with peace, with peace. See, when we are, many times you will see this also if you go to any such places, like, there are people who, for instance, let's say they have abandoned everything and they go there. You will find that there is something else that they take on. See, there's some other responsibilities they take on, they build something and all the rest, right? See, as long as you're living, you will have to do something, because that is the nature of life itself, right? And if you don't do your swadharma, you will be doing something else which is suboptimal.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah. And so it will only, as you rightly said, it will, if anything, become an impediment to realizing the stillness. Because if you're doing something that is not an expression of your swadharma, then there is a conflict, and that conflict will be an impediment.
Yeah, I'm also trying to reconcile with, I think, I don't know if Bhagavan said it, but there are several saints I've heard that when people go and ask them, hey, why are you, there's all these problems in the world, and, what's the point of just, doing this, sitting and meditating and all of that? And I think many saints have said that, this is the being connected with yourself. I don't know what's the right way to say it. That is, in fact, the biggest service you can do to all of mankind, more than anything else you can do in the outer world. Isn't that something that you, I don't know, said, am I correct in saying?
See, that's right. See, when you are, the primary thing is to abide in the stillness, right? Because if we are not in stillness, then we are causing a lot of disturbance
Yes.
in society. right?
Yes.
We may be doing a lot of things, but it only causes disturbance
Yes,
in
exactly,
society.
exactly. So
So
that is my point.
correct.
Yes.
But to abide in stillness, but in that stillness, there is always action, right? And that action is always very beautiful.
Yeah,
So if you take
the ideal state is, I agree with you, the ideal state is if you are able to abide in stillness and still be able to engage in the outer world, being of service to this, family, community, and all of that's the ideal best state to be in. But most of us are not there to be able to do both at the same time, and so it feels like we have to make a choice between one or the other, and that seems to be a struggle.
no. So one thing is, see, it's not about serving community, serving, it doesn't matter. So you may be sitting and, like I said with the example of Ramanujan, you may be writing math equations in your own room. You're not serving anyone in that point, but eventually it may serve. See,
Yeah.
one of the amazing things, for example, is those who like math will say this, that number theory is the area that Ramanujan worked in.
Okay, yeah.
And he had a friend mathematician called Hardy.
Yes.
And so Hardy used to joke that number theory is something I love because it's the one area that has no practical application. It is math for the joy of math, right? So you're not serving anyone literally. It's just purely numbers, right? But the funny thing is, it turned out later that number theory had tremendous applications, but they didn't know that 100 years ago.
Right.
When they were working on number theory, they thought they were just working for the joy of numbers.
Yeah.
And Hardy made this cute remark that it's one area which has. So the thing is, it's not about practical application. It's not about serving. All of that is, see,
you're yes. I don't even mean that. What I meant is the swabhava. I think what is important there is,
correct.
Are you doing something which is so natural, innate
correct.
to you, or are you expressing that?
That's
Period.
it. That's
all.
it. Exactly. So let's not bring in this idea of that's the reason why in the secular world people will say, oh, this question what you just said. Oh, why are you sitting and talking? Why don't you go and serve 10 people? But that's a very limited way of understanding, because if you're feeding 10 people one meal, you're not doing anything fundamentally to help them, right? So you have to, and many times this kind of argument comes, why are you, like, even at the civilizational level, people will say, you are a poor country, why are you investing in space research? This kind of thinking comes only because people have this wrong idea. One who Swadharma space research should do space research. He's not going to go and do social service just because there are poor people, right? Yeah. You have to do what your Swadharma is. Yeah. And if everyone does their Swadharma, then the whole society grows. So, because that's the nature of universe itself. It expresses everyone is of a unique kind, and we express. Yeah. So that's all, right? It's not about serving. It's not about doing anything. You be in stillness and express your Swadharma. This is literally the entire Gita summarized is only this. For Arjuna, it was said, you go and fight because that's his Swadharma, while being still within, without a sense of doership. And that fight is the same fight we all have in different ways. It's a metaphor also for life itself, right? Whatever we do, life is always, see, because again, if you want to go into science, the law of, like, there is a thermodynamics law called entropy.
Entropy, yeah.
Right?
Third law of thermodynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, in fact, all the
second law. So everything degrades, right? That's the law of entropy, very simply put. So the body, if I don't do anything, it becomes weak or sick or unhealthy. So I have to eat, I have to clean up, I have to exercise, I have to do whatever. So living involves some form of battle, because you are fighting entropy literally, right? So Arjuna's, that's a very beautiful metaphor for life itself. So you have to do something to keep yourself healthy. You have to do something to keep your surroundings, like they say, if I don't do anything, this place will get dirty. You don't have to do anything to get it dirty, right? You have to do something to make it clean. That's the law of entropy. So everything degrades over time unless we do something about it, right? So our purpose is, or our Swadharma is to therefore act in consonance with our Swabhava, to engage in the battle of the circumstances we are living in to the fullest possible extent, while being still within. That's all.
Doesn't doesn't doing it with an attitude of non-doership, doesn't that bridge the point that you're making?
That's what is,
Because,
yeah. Right.
if you approach it with the spirit, the work you're doing, whatever it is outside, right?
Yeah.
Based on your swabhava, but how you execute it with the spirit of non-doership is what bridges.
Yes.
Right.
And
So,
that is, doing it with the spirit of non-doership is not easy.
yeah, so that's the
If
whole
you're
pointer. See, so this is repeat. So the point is, if we do the action according to our swabhava with the spirit of non-doership, then there is freedom.
Right, that's the bridge.
That's the bridge, and that's very true. So that's the whole point of all this inquiry, is that it's not to shirk action, but to act without the spirit of doership, with the spirit of non-doership.
Krishna also says like about karma yoga, right? Like act.
That's the same thing, yeah.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Ishvara
It's all karma. See, karma yoga, whichever way we put it, like, do action without any, in fact, he says 2, 3 things in that famous verse, right? He says, you have the right to action, you don't have any right to the result, and you cannot be attached to non-doership. Like non-doing, that is, not non-doership, non-doing, that is. So you cannot, in other words, you cannot be simply inactive because action causes conflict. Because being inactive is also an action.
Right. In fact, today's topic actually reminded me that the whole Bhagavad Gita happens because of this, right?
Exactly.
Like Arjuna wants to
Exactly.
escape the
Exactly.
life.
Exactly. See, that's in fact, that's the very essence of, see, that's why it's a very important lesson that was somehow lost over time. So even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says the same thing to Arjuna. I gave this teaching before, but it was lost over time. So I'm giving it again. And then it has again lost over time because people,
even entropy in that.
yeah, everything. So there were philosophies that came that denied life, and all kinds of things have happened. And then, see, all of this, see, for instance, even the spirit of warrior, right, that some people have, that is very natural, right? And one has to, so that's why Arjuna is a warrior. And society naturally needs to have warriors who are able to do the warriorship without a sense of doership. Both are important, right? Otherwise, it becomes a very warmongering society if you are a warrior with a sense of aggression.
Right.
But if you are having no spirit of warriorship, you become a doormat and other people come and run over you, which is what happened. So you need to have a sense of warriorship without a sense of doership. And that's true with everything.
So not aggressive but defensive.
Yeah, we can say defensive, but yes, the point is you have to be very, see, you have to, it's not just defensive, you have to expand also, right? See, naturally, for example, see, even if you look at the,
Expand for self-defense, right?
whichever way, you can expand for the purpose of spreading dharma. See, in any way, you could expand
No, I'm talking about country level.
at all levels. See, for instance, if you look at even let's say, the ancient kings and all that, there are many who were very, like even in the south, we had this famous king who, what's his name, Rajaraja Cholan, who expanded to north, southeast, to different parts of the, so even
Yes.
today, if you go to, like I went to Cambodia, and you will see the remnants of the Chola Angkor Wat temple is there, and the names and all of that, right? So it's very natural to see architecture as expansion, right? So people build these big temples, big monuments. So that's a healthy civilization, right? And a healthy individual also. So at an individual level, if we are expanding by expressing our potential while having no sense of doership.
Yeah, one practical challenge that I've seen comes up is knowing what your Swadharma is for many people.
Yes.
You know, particularly when you're
Young.
young. I mean, ideally, you would want
Correct.
people to
Correct.
go into the right career based on the Swadharma, but that requires a lot of awareness and insight,
Right.
self-awareness, all of that, which comes maybe a little later, hopefully.
Correct.
So one thing that I really, liked is in Bhagavad Gita, right, Krishna says that, or it's interpreted by people in a way that do what the role demands, than as compared to what your likes and dislikes are. Like whatever role we are in, you do according to what that role demands, and that way automatically you're aligned with this whole path, right?
I see. I mean, the thing is, there are many who try to interpret these things in the context of corporate world and this and that. That's not the point. See, the point is, and it's not either right or wrong. It is what it is. It's the point is simply that if you recognize your swabhava, right, the drive that makes you feel naturally expressing your potential, and you work on it without a sense of doership, then you are in harmony with life itself. Then the body has its own energy, it expresses itself, and it has its own talents, whatever it does, and it expresses. And while you are inwardly undisturbed because you are still and peaceful. And at any time in life, any stage in life, one can do this in their own way. And the easy way to look at it is, what is the best way that I can engage my potential to bring out the best that can be brought out at this moment, at any given point. That's a very simple way to orient yourself. And as you say correctly, it's not, as we grow up, it's hard, right? Especially because in today's education system, we are constantly pushing people in all directions. There is no relationship with the child and understanding of the child's potential and bringing it out. All that is missing. So suddenly, all that comes in the way, and it has to change. But we can only change from our own lives, right? So if we, in our own life, and the children we are in touch with, if we can give this wisdom to live in consonance with their nature, while recognizing that actions are happening not through any individual self. That if we can give this pointer to even young children, as they high school and so on, just give them this pointer. It may not immediately go through, but it will, at some point it might click.
Yeah. And for some it comes naturally. Some of them say, I know I wanted to become a doctor because I wanted to serve others. There are some people who actually know this, but not for the majority, I think.
Even that could be escaping as well. Right? Sorry, you can continue.
I have a question. One is we discussed here, it's all seems very logical in your earlier stages when you were really expanding. But after some time, it comes like in that 6 growth, existence, growth, going up, and all those six levels of existence is there, right? The natural way of
Yeah, yeah.
growing and staying stable and then coming down and all those. So when your body is not doing it, you're not really, even mentally you're not you don't expect anything, you're not expanding. In the sense, you don't have any goal here to kind of achieve something or anything. So I feel the best way would be to have that mind of service.
Yes.
Whatever comes my way,
Right.
just do the best,
Yeah.
serving it.
Correct.
Don't look for anything else. If you don't,
Right.
there's
Yeah,
no
so
need to
the-
look for anything else.
Correct. So the question is, I'm just because it's good. So the point made is maybe one is at a stage of life where there is no outer responsibilities, and one is old enough, and the body is also
Vanaprastha.
vanaprastha stage, let's say, or whatever, and even in that stage, we can engage in serving, is what Prabha said. It's very true. So, whatever way in which you can serve, that is the best, in consonance with your swabhava, that is,
Yeah.
right? So, if you are very good at something, you share it with others in whichever way you can share, right? Through teaching it or through writing about it. See, we can always do something which is bringing out something that expresses the creativity of our being. So, that expression of creativity doesn't have to be something very grand, right? We can even like decorating the house in a proper way is an act of creativity, right? Taking care in setting up something or whatever we do, and especially when we are able to, as you say, serve in that way as an expression of our nature, that's enough. That's more than enough, because what it does is it gives us the see, otherwise what happens is subconsciously there is this sense of, sometimes one may feel a sense of regret that I haven't done exactly,
and things like that.
right, exactly. But
whatever comes your way,
do it fully. But the important thing is to, that's why what he said, you have to be always turn within. Without that recognition, it can cause those vrittis which then cause disturbance. But if we completely avoid it and escape it, it is another problem. So it's just having that balance where we are doing that and this. Yeah.
Can it be said that the divinity is going to express itself no matter what, and the way of being, like the way the ego rises, and it has its own likes and dislikes, is pretty much getting in the way.
Yes.
That's what is actually happening.
Yes.
Right.
So by recognizing
Yeah.
where we are getting in the way,
Right.
we let the divinity express itself.
That's what the doership, without the doership.
Doership.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do without.
So that's the, sometimes, it's probably well known, but that's the metaphor of the flute, you know this, right? See, Krishna playing the flute. The flute produces music because it's empty, right? But it produces beautiful music. The moment there is an obstacle in the flute, there is no music coming out. So that's the ego. That's all it is. The me that says, I want this, I want that, prevents the flute from being played by the divine. So each one of us is the flute of the divine, which plays perfectly when there is no blockage in the flute, which is the me.
Right. So basically that means that there's no way to not do any action. I mean, action is always being done.
Correct.
It's just that
what kind of action.
what kind of
Exactly.
action, and just by being thinking that I am the doer, I am actually blocking it.
Correct.
The
So
more,
it's exactly what Gita Krishna says. You cannot, when Arjuna says, I'll go away, he says, you cannot remain for a moment without acting. You know this, he says exactly that. Because you will either say, you will either act in consonance with your Swadharma. That was the choice to Arjuna. Right? Either you act in consonance with your Swadharma and fight, or you go somewhere and you will do some other action which is not in consonance with your Swadharma.
right,
And then you will be neither having this nor having that. So that's why you act, while recognizing the non-doership. So he says, I think it's the expression is yuddhasva ma manusmara. He says, fight while abiding in me.
and oftentimes, like we notice that, like at least I notice that the reason I act or do something is because of pain. Like when there is some pain,
Yes.
to avoid that, you end up doing something. Watch it.
There's only, I've reflected and I've also heard this, right, which is true. We all act
Because of-
only for two things. Either we are seeking pleasure or we are
Avoiding pain.
avoiding pain. This is how taught in Buddhist Vipassana too, right?
Right.
So that's true. But then you got to rise above that.
Correct. That's the point.
That's
That's the point.
Yeah.
See, the impulse of action coming through pain or pleasure is still rooted in the me.
Right.
Right? But when you are acting out of the sense of no doer, right? Then there is an action of a totally different quality,
Yeah.
where there is just an expression of your potential, which is neither for pleasure nor for avoiding pain, but just the joy of expression itself.
Right.
So that's the real meaning of the word art. See, you don't do art. See, when you engage in art, in any true activity, the art is not just painting or, dancing or music or whatever, right? Everything is an art. Art literally means right way of doing things, right? Right way of doing things is art. So everything, when done correctly and aesthetically, becomes an art. And so to bring forth art in life, aesthetics in life is because that's what, see, if we say that's what God is doing, right? When we say God, we mean the whole universe. Again, immediate, so it's important to recognize there is no person. It's just the whole universe is an expression of God. And everything is beautiful, right? Everything is expressing itself beautifully. You look at a butterfly, you look at a bird, everything is all a work of art. So when we are in harmony with it, then whatever we produce is artful. Otherwise, it's not.
I had a question. Does Bhagavan talk about this, but the topic we're talking about today specifically, explicitly somewhere, or is it in Bhagavan?
Yeah, so he is referred to it in many places that silence is intense activity and so on. Yeah, it's not that. See, for instance, many people would come and ask him, "Should I, leave my house?"
Yes, I've read that. Yes.
And he would always say, "No.
Yeah.
You are going to carry the same mind with you wherever you go. So you can be free where you are doing what you are doing." So that's and also through his life itself, right? He demonstrated through everything he did was a work of art. You've seen his handwriting; it's so beautiful. Of course, it's naturally beautiful, his handwriting.
Yeah.
But even things he did,
Yeah.
the cooking he did,
I used to help in the kitchen.
the construction work that was that he did, of course the poetry he wrote, he would sometimes draw some things, everything. See, every little thing was done with a lot of care for that act itself, right? So there was art in there was aesthetics in every expression. not for the sense of, see, there is no,
Right.
it's
There's
right. So,
no-
that
yes.
that principle was demonstrated in the very living of the very living of Ramana Maharishi,
Yes.
and he has talked about it.
Yeah, and where did you said there are some philosophies that came in and kind of confused people around what was originally said in the Gita? Which ones are those? Is it where did
I mean,
you
there
see-
is, see, there is, for instance,
because the reason I'm asking is that certainly a very big, I would almost say, like in the world of spirituality and religion, Hindu religions and other one, all that. There's a lot of people who actually leave everything and go. That is part of the way this
Yeah.
practice, and you think that this is actually what is
There are
recommended.
many ashrams in India.
Yeah, and so I'm wondering where this.
it's crept in probably in many ways there are different philosophies that came, different, I'm sure, it's not one specific thing we can point to. There are many who've come and brought forth all of these things because, as I said, if you look at the rishis, for instance, they were all engaged in action of various kinds.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like I can relate to you, like a lot of the Tamil siddhas.
Yeah.
Think about Bogar or Tirumular, Agasthyar, Tiruvalluvar, all of those people. They all created poetry. They all came up. They had natural medicines and poetry, a lot of different kinds of things, and Sanskrit. Sorry, the grammar, right? Agasthyar, right? They did a lot of things to for the to that, of course, maybe the swabhava, but it was also very valuable to humanity itself. They didn't just close their eyes and
Correct.
stay in stillness.
Exactly. So that's the point, right? So that there can, and the same is true with, so that's why the example is given of not just rishis, but even kings like Janaka and so on is given in Gita, right? So you can be a king, you can be, that's why Ram is given as the perfect embodiment of a king who lived and ruled with wisdom, right? So you could be not just could be in any realm of life and be free of this false sense of doership while engaging in action for the welfare of the whole society. And that's been the model. See, there has always been there are many who have come brought forth various other alternate visions which are, it's been, see, even if you look at the Vedic canon, there are so many different philosophies there too, right? There is so many different philosophies, there is so many different, so that's why you cannot pinpoint anything and say this is what it is, this is what that is. But the general, see, that's why it's, if you look at it from the first principles, as they say, if you even ignore all of tradition, right? What if all the books are burned?
Yes.
And you are left with nothing
Yeah.
but your own ability to inquire.
Yes.
See, this is what the Buddha said, right?
Yeah.
Be your own light.
Yeah.
Because no book ultimately can reveal to you.
Yes.
See, why is a book even valuable finally? Because you believe in the book, right? Finally, it's you who give authority to the book. Like if I don't think Vedas are great, then Vedas have no value. Only so the authority of Vedas or Gita or any book comes only because I am giving value to it.
Exactly. I like that. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because if you go to some country where there is no Gita, they don't know, they don't care about Gita. Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I am giving value to a book, therefore the book is important. So the I is more important than the book.
100%. I
So,
know that. Yes.
so then what? So therefore, if the book goes away, also I remain.
Yes. Yes.
So then what matters is not the book, not the tradition finally. So discard everything and be your own light and inquire and if come upon the same recognition.
I think in fact Bhagavan says that in the Vamai also,
Yes.
that don't keep endlessly reading books,
Yes.
because they all are going to say the same
Same
thing,
thing.
to go back to silence.
Correct.
So
That's it.